Hello again, everybody. It is with great pleasure I'm able to welcome the Minister, Matt Warman MP, to the platform. The Minister, I think, probably needs no introduction to the audience here. He's been involved in helping to promote better broadband services, particularly in more challenging areas, for a long time, leading the parliamentary process in many ways over a number of years. So he knows us and the sector well, and I think is one of those ministers who really gets the issues and understands, what it is and why we're actually doing it. So, Minister, thank you very much for joining us, and over to you. I understand you're on quite a tight timetable, but if you have any time for questions, that's great. If not, thank you very much for taking the time.
Well, lovely. Thank you, Malcolm, and thank you for the invitation. It's a shame that it's virtual, but delighted to join you here at this conference. And I think, obviously, it underlines quite what an important role the telecom sector has played over the last few months. We've seen this extraordinary period of acceleration, whether it's in classrooms virtually, whether it's in workplaces virtually, whether it's in almost every walk of life. We've now got a huge reliance on digital technology that simply wasn't there less than a year ago. And so a huge thank you to everybody that is involved in that. I know that DCMS plays a part, but we play a small part compared to those on the ground making this happen. So hugely grateful to everyone who is involved in providing the connectivity that we all need, and really pleased to see a small but richly deserving number of people represented in the most recent honours list, playing a crucial role keeping Nightingale hospitals connected, keeping really important aspects of this new way of working going. So congratulations to those, but thank you more generally to the sector. I know it's not just engineers, it's all of those operational leaders, it's all of those people working in call centres, it's all of those people that play a part in what is an immensely complex and diverse process that is required to provide us all with the connectivity that we need. And of course it goes across the whole country, across the whole four nations as well. So it is a really heroic effort, and I think we don't talk enough perhaps about quite what is involved in all of that. What I want to talk about today, though, really is what do the next few years look like? Because, of course, what's happened over the last few months is that we've seen just how important I think that programme of running ahead of the demand that we had seen is going to be, and the commitment from the government to deliver that gigabit target as fast as we can to get as many people connected as we possibly can by 2025 is a hugely important thing, and it's something that no one these days questions. So it is good to feel like there is both the political backing from people from number 10 downwards, but also that there is the backing from the public, because everyone gets it. That's why it's really great news, I think, that we're now at more than 1 in 4 people connected to a gigabit capable network. That is progress, and it is driven both by BT, by Virgin, and also by a host of other providers. So it really is a massive effort. 5.2 million premises on full fibre broadband, that's an increase of 2.3 million. The rate of increase is what's really important here, and I think it's why you're going to see some really impressive progress over the next few years. But that doesn't take away from the fact that, particularly in the hardest to reach areas, then it is going to be a tough job. It is going to continue to be a tough job, and government has to do everything it can, because even though I think by the end of the next year we'll probably see coverage of gigabit capable networks above 50%, it is getting to as close to 100% as you can reasonably expect to as quickly as possible. That is the challenging bit. So hugely aware of the importance of independent operators. The whole membership of INCA, I think, is going to be a really important part of this equation. So now really is the time of the independent network, and I think we need to make sure that as a government we do everything we possibly can to facilitate the maximum possible kind of coverage. In 2019, and not this year, the last year, we saw a more than 50% increase of the coverage provided by independent networks, and that is progress. It gives us something to really build on, and I think we need to do everything we can, as I say, to make sure that we see what it is that promoted that kind of investment, what it is that promoted that kind of rollout, and that we learn as much as we possibly can from that, so that we suck up as much of that appetite for investment, as much of that appetite for rollout as we possibly can. And I think if I think back to the report that you launched with Point Topic about the ambition of those networks, £1.7 billion of private funding going in between the start of 2019 and September 2020, that is on top of £5.7 billion of private funding already announced. So really extraordinary numbers compared to where we thought we would be not that long ago. But as I say, both more to do and I think more opportunity. So we're seeing real competition. I think that is good for consumers. I think it's good for the sector. And it's also what we said we wanted to see when we talked about, as a government, in the Future Telecoms Infrastructure Review more than 2 years ago, promoting competition. So I think it's important that we see maximum input from government to promote that, while also trying as much as we possibly can to get out of the way and allow the market where it can to work as effectively as possible and independently. We know that there's more that we can do. That's why we've seen the beginning, although not to my frustration, the completion of the Telecoms Infrastructure Leasehold Property Bill, making its way through the Lords currently, that will make it easier for the rollout of primarily fibre networks in multi-dwelling units in blocks of flats. I think that is a good bit of progress, and the quicker we can wrap that up, the better. We've similarly seen us talk about in more detail the plan for mandating better connectivity in new builds, and in the new year I think we'll be looking to talk more about that as well. We're also, of course, working, as we have done for some years, but as we've seen some real progress recently, with the Department for Transport, and we've also seen some progress on Section 58, flexi permits, allowing people to simply get on with digging up the roads as quickly and as effectively as possible, because we all want that connectivity to be there. Likewise, Electronic Communications Code is an issue that is raised very, I think, fairly by the industry at every opportunity. The more we can do to promote reform to the ECC, the better. And I think at the same time, the more we can do, with those non-legislative approaches to issues that are touched by the ECC, then the better, because that will allow us to go faster. So all in all, this is trying to put in the regulation that is limited to where it is necessary and provides that longer term stability and predictability that allows investors to make the decisions that will see Britain get the kind of connectivity as soon as it possibly can that it is needed. I'm conscious as well that a skilled workforce is a really important part of that, and of course that means making sure that we work with operators to help them provide the training program. We know the good work that some people do with the apprenticeship levy, for instance. There are good things that we can continue to do, working with our colleagues at the Department for Work and Pensions to make sure that people are alive to the possibilities of working in the telecom sector at a host of levels. And of course, that means that where there will be a huge amount of job displacement deeply regressively over the course of the fallout from the COVID pandemic, then we need to make sure that people are, as I say, aware of those opportunities. The Chancellor's already announced a number of interventions that fund training, that create long-term employment and work placements, whether that's the Kickstart scheme as part of the Plan for Jobs, or whether that's some of the other interventions that are really important. And that's why we're going to continue, of course, to work closely with the Treasury, with DWP, to make sure that telecoms gets the shout that it deserves, and that people understand that there is that investor appetite translates into jobs. Government's got £5 billion to pump prime some of that, but it's also £5 billion to stimulate the economy. It sits alongside huge commercial appetite, as I talked about a minute ago. So I think we need to make sure that we try and create that virtuous circle of creating and securing jobs while also providing the rollout that people need. So we need to continue to work together as government and as the industry, so that both our urban areas and those harder to connect rural communities really derive that benefit. Of course, I mentioned the £5 billion commitment. There are already schemes out there that are doing some really good work. I think primarily of the Gigabit Broadband Voucher Scheme, which is targeted at those rural, hard to reach areas, open till March next year, and draws from a £70 million fund allocated this year to that rural connectivity. And we've been, as part of that, we've also been experimenting with how we can sell it better, if I can put it like that, through the Broadband Upgrade Fund, which was piloted in areas like Cornwall, West Wales, Cumbria, Northumberland, that is essentially a slightly more consumer-facing version of the voucher scheme. It allows people to go online to sign up, to indicate their interest, and then on the other side of the coin, it allows providers to see where there are those clusters of people that are either commercially viable operations once the voucher is factored in themselves, or where maybe a little bit of extra marketing might make them a commercially viable operation. We've seen really good take up amongst consumers for this, almost doubling what we projected ourselves for what success would look like. So really positive signs there. And of course, the second stage is making sure that then translates into really good build rates. So we ran the pilot for less than 2 months. We saw some 15,000 people register to use the scheme, and what that means is we've got a really concrete idea of a way we might perhaps, without preempting what we'll be saying later on, but a way we might perhaps in the future be demonstrating both to suppliers that there is demand in certain areas, and to consumers that government is putting real hard cash into a programme that makes a fundamental difference to their lives, whether they're educating their children more online, whether they're trying to make sure that they take advantage of everything from Netflix to the iPlayer. So that's currently in addition to the the £5 billion scheme that will be coming up, but it gives you a flavour of the sort of things that we are seeking to do to maximise the commercial rollout, and also to maximise the bang for our public buck. What we've now got to do, of course, is design that system so that the lots within the gigabit program are as attractive commercially as they can be, while also promoting as much competition as we possibly can. And we're going to be using a mixture of interventions to make sure that we, as I say, get that best possible value. But we do ultimately have to acknowledge that there's going to be a range of sizes of lot, a range of size of tender, so that we can make sure that it is tailored for individual geographies, because ultimately there are some areas where competition may be more intense than others, and independent network providers play an important role in helping us to achieve those ambitions. So I'd really encourage you to be actively involved in joining that procurement framework and taking part in those important market reviews. We're currently looking at developing the pipeline of areas for initial deployment. We'll publish that first draft later this year. That will give you a real sense of where we're going, and then moving rapidly as we go over the next few months to provide as much detail as possible, both to the industry and of course to consumers, because I think it is consumers who really do want to know what the plan is, because people will maybe take their own steps if they're in a position to do so, if they know that there's not likely to be anything there for a certain period of time, but if they see transparency on rollout plans, then that will allow certainty for the industry over what the take-up might be, and it will allow certainty for us as well. So we're also, in tandem with that, introducing a comprehensive strategy of policy and regulatory interventions to try and extend and accelerate that gigabit-capable deployment in commercially viable areas. And I know there was a panel discussion, I think a little bit earlier on, focused on encouraging consumer take-up and choice, because it's not enough for us to provide that kind of service. We need to encourage people to make sure that they take it up as well. We're doing our bit. In August, I launched a new task force called GigaTag, working with the CBI, the FSB and Which. The Take-Up Advisory Group is what the tag bit at the end stands for. That's looking at what government can do, but also what the private sector and the broader public sector can do to promote take-up, because I really do think the aim is for that virtuous circle of saying there is demand, there is investor appetite. Linking the two up together creates a much clearer picture and a much greater opportunity to expand that commercially viable part of the country, which we think can probably take us to 80% and beyond of overall coverage. So I look forward to GigaTag's interim recommendations before the end of the year, and there'll be more to come relatively soon in the new year. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what government is trying to do. It gives you a sense of hopefully that we get it, and that we understand the real importance of doing all of this work, because fundamentally it really does change people's lives. It is about allowing you to educate your children, to work from home, to do all of those things that we need to do now more than ever, and that we know will persist as a result of the, I think, permanent or semi-permanent changes that have been made to how people work, live and play as a result of the changes that we've seen over the last few months. So thank you very much, Malcolm, for inviting me. Very keen to hear more about the conference sessions that you've got later on. I don't know if we've got time for questions now. He said looking at the clock, but if you have got a couple of questions, very happy to take them.
Please put your questions in the Q&A now, if you have any. You caught them out, Matt. I'll ask a question quickly whilst people are busily typing. When do you anticipate the BDUK programme announcements to be coming out? You said later this year, so presumably that's going to be before Christmas.
Yes, exactly. And I think what I've tried to encourage the team to do, and what Parliament wants to see, which I think is an important factor, is what does that initial programme of tendering look like? Because obviously there's a geographic component, but there's also sort of talking a bit more about what our thought processes are, because it's got to work for independent networks, it's got to work for the larger players as well, and obviously that I suppose that's a long-winded way of saying everyone will be happy to some extent, shall we say, but what we've got to do is come up with something that delivers the maximum possible number of connections over a sensible time frame, but doesn't simply focus on speed of going past premises. It focuses on delivering benefit to people who currently don't have the broadband that allows them to live a 21st century life effectively.
Yeah. Okay, two quick questions which are coming up here. One is definition of full fibre. Quite a lot of people have expressed the concern about the fact that consumers often think they've already got a fibre network. And in fact, somebody this morning said, they're asking people to, they're saying to people they're ripping out their existing connection to replace it with a fibre connection. They said, well, we've got fibre now.
Mm.
Is there anything more that you think the government can do to try and help?
Well, so this came up at the Select Committee relatively recently, and I think we can collectively, we can do better than what we've got at the moment. I think one of the suggestions was, for instance, what about a traffic light system that sort of says, well, green is full fibre and amber is kind of, and red is not. That's used in a number of other countries around the world. What about simply different words where we've got full fibre at the moment? Obviously, it's something for both the ASA and Ofcom to opine on. But I do think, on the one hand, we can do better. On the other, I would say the onus is to some extent on industry to say this is what we think good looks like, because at the moment what we do have, and I share this, is a sense of frustration that consumers are perhaps not as well informed as they could be. On the other, I think we'd all be interested in seeing what future proposals might look like.
Yeah, I think it's incumbent on the industry to do more ourselves as well. And to that, in that respect, INCA does have a quality mark, a gold standard for full fibre networks, which we should be promoting more for our members to use to help describe their networks. One final question, vouchers, very popular amongst the independent networks. So they've been very successful, in fact, at helping connect quite challenging businesses and different areas. Can we get a bit more simplicity in the future scheme? That's been asked by a number of our members. We'd like to see a nice, straightforward, simple scheme if we can get it.
Well, I think, as I said earlier, the Broadband Upgrade Fund is a way of trying to bring some simplicity to this. It's about saying to consumers, there is government money on the table. If you can make sure that you get as many people to express an interest as possible, and it's about saying to the industry, there is definitely an interest in area X. Zoom in on the map and you can see quite how many people there are. I think it works really well in the sense that it gives, whether you're a parish council or a county council or something in between, it gives you something you can say to people who are grumpy about their poor connectivity. Go here, demonstrate an interest. It will allow the government and industry to work together in a bid to try and help you. But I don't think vouchers are a panacea, because inevitably there are areas where you could give a voucher for many tens of thousands of pounds and it still wouldn't cover the cost. In Scotland, where they have recently, working with us, the Scottish government and the UK government have produced a different quantum of voucher. We will see what effect that has in driving take-up, and we will learn lessons from that. But I think we also ultimately will need to acknowledge that there are some parts of the country where vouchers can be the crucial difference between viability and not. There are other parts of the country where we have to think rather differently.
Yeah, indeed. Final point from me, which is obviously a lot of investments coming into the sector. And I think you have helped to create the policy environment which has been leading to that investment coming into the sector, which is tremendous, absolutely fantastic. One thing we're quite keen to do is to try to ensure that there is a close alignment between Ofcom and its definition of geographic markets and what the government is doing in terms of setting out plans for the BDUK intervention areas. I note that you mentioned that in the CMS committee as well, and that's something we're very keen to work with you on.
Yeah, I think we all, again, this is another area where we have to be singing off the same hymn sheet, don't we? And there are, I think there are inevitably going to be sort of slight wrinkles around the edges, but fundamentally we need to make sure that we understand what a commercially viable area looks like and what a much less viable area looks like, so that we can plan the interventions appropriately.
Minister, thank you very much. Thanks for your time again, and thanks for taking the trouble to join us this afternoon.
Pleasure, and have a good rest of the event.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Hello again, everybody. Just before we end, I thought it would be a good idea to invite Rob Leenderts, INCA's chair, in fact, INCA's outgoing chair, to join me on the platform just to give a few reflections on the conference. So, Rob, if you can join us, that would be great. Or Lucy, if you could join Rob.
I'm here. Hello.
Hi, Rob. Great to see the Minister both speaking to the conference and taking questions. He rather caught me out there because I wasn't anticipating. I've been told no questions. It didn't.
It was a bit of a surprise, yeah.
And to everybody who's still with us in the audience, that's still about 85 people. That's great, thank you. Hopefully, I managed to cover the questions that flew in quickly. And just before I hand over to Rob, I just want to say thank you again to both participants in the conference, the platform organisers, of course, digital leaders who've with the remote platform, which we think is pretty good, actually. We think it's a bit complicated to use at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's not bad at all. Of course, thanks to our sponsors, Hellman Titan, CommScope, Calix, Adtran and Duraline. Thank you very much for your help in this. Without you, it's very difficult for us to run these sorts of things. And of course, thanks to Jill and the rest of the INCA team who've been working extremely hard to put this event together. We're starting at 4 o'clock with INCA's AGM, so we'll close this down, and then our AGM is going to take place on Zoom. It's a smaller event. So if you're joining that, you should have a link in the email from us to tell you where to go for the annual general meeting, the Zoom link. But Rob, over to you. What have you made of today, and what reflections do you have on the sector as a whole in the time that you've been chair of INCA, which is the past 2-3 years?
Yeah, thanks, Malcolm. And yeah, well, what a day. I think it's been, I think, a really interesting event, not least of which the software that we've been using to run the event. It's quite a change. It's been a real big change to move away from Zoom and use this particular software, but I think it's worked really well.
Yeah, thank you for recommending it, Rob. It was you who actually suggested it.
Yeah, well, it was only because I saw it being used by BDUK at one of their sort of local body engagement sessions, and they had about 150 people on it, and I thought straight away it's really good for networking, and I've certainly spent quite a bit of time jumping from table to table and chatting to people that otherwise you just wouldn't get the chance to. So hopefully everybody else has had that chance.
It's one of the most important aspects of an INCA conference, isn't it? The ability to talk to each other. And also that link between operators and suppliers, local authorities, etc. Not enough local authorities here, but you know, it's the first one.
Yeah, there's a few, but yeah, there needs to be more, I think. But yeah, I mean, like you, my thanks to digital leaders for helping support. Certainly huge thanks to all the sponsors, without which this wouldn't be possible. But also, Malcolm, thanks to you and the INCA team for setting up this. I didn't have much input on this particular one myself, although I've been heavily involved in other events, but I know it's largely a thankless task. So well done for putting this all together. And well done to Jill and James and the rest of the team. So I guess my thoughts, I think it was really interesting hearing from the Minister, and thanks to the Minister for his involvement. Very interesting and encouraging to see that he kind of gets what we're all doing, work we're doing, and is largely supportive. Of course, there's always more that can be done. I do hope that everybody took note of his comment that suggested how important membership of INCA is for the industry. I wrote that down actually, and I think we should put that as a tagline. The Minister says. So please do get in touch for those that aren't members. Get in touch with Jill or any of the INCA team if you want to become a member. And also, I think some of the conversations were leading towards work that INCA's done on the gold standard and the quality mark that we did some time ago. But as you say, Malcolm, we probably need to push a little bit further because it does help to differentiate full fibre networks from those that are copper based. But it's also there to support next generation wireless networks and also wholesale capable networks. So that's quite important too. The event's been extended for another 30 minutes. Great. Okay, that gives us a bit of time. So I think there's some really interesting conversations today. Some of the sessions, from looking at 100% coverage of both urban and rural across the country, the regulation and investment side of things, labour and skills, a hugely important issue, and probably the most talked about issue today, I think, which is the one of wholesale, which, as you know, is a subject close to my heart. It's encouraging to see interaction from everybody, from chat and Q&A. I think there was really great involvement from everybody. And from an industry perspective, I think there's such a lot going on. You know, every year seems to get busier and busier, and there's more and more going on, but never more so than this year. I think there's even more investment coming in that we would have thought possible, you know, a year or two ago. Personally, I've been involved in a number of due diligence advisory services, at least 4 operator investments over the past 12 months alone. And I'm seeing an encouraging trend from public sector looking into investing in fibre backbones, not fibre to the premise, but to fix the fibre backhaul problem in their area, because they want people to come and build. So there's a number of public sector organisations looking at that. And they're also looking at smart place and delivering spare capacity so that operators can come and build. So there's lots going on. I think for me, the key things, I think there's going to be a lot of change on in the coming sort of 6-12 months. Wholesale, definitely. That's one of the key ones, and it needs the likes of TalkTalk and Sky to step up and start engaging directly with industry and saying, this is what we want. This is what we want to see your networks deliver. I think public sector getting more involved in industry and encouraging competition in their areas. And I think the labour and skills gap is something that's going to really come up and bite everybody on the behind if we don't do something about it. I think those are some of the key issues coming up in the next 6-12 months.
Thank you very much, Rob. Yeah, it's really useful. And I think one thing we can say is that during the course of this terrible year, this year of pandemic and disaster all around, our industry has done its job. It's done its job really well. It's delivered what people need, which is the best possible connectivity we can achieve. And I'm just delighted that the investment's coming into the sector, and that we're having sort of serious conversations about how we actually deploy that investment, how we build the networks, and how we get more customers onto those networks in the most effective and most engaging way. Basically, I think these are all good conversations to be having. I want to say thank you again to Lucy, Robin, and the Digital Leaders team. If you want to use, if you 70 odd people are still here, if you're interested in this platform, it's called Remo. You can easily find it. And if you want some support in setting up your own events using Remo, then I can highly recommend getting in touch with Digital Leaders, Lucy, Robin, and the team, because they are fantastically helpful. So
you can just look through the chat, Malcolm. Almost every single comment has said what a great platform
it is. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need to be able to provide some form of engagement and networking, because just running this whole day as just a webinar on Zoom where the whole thing is blank apart from the person on stage, it's just not ideal at all, is it? So having some form of engagement between people, I think, is fantastic, and particularly because we want to ensure that people can talk about projects, look at possibilities, possible engagement, and so on and so forth. So cool, thank you very much. Right, INCA's AGM takes place at 4 o'clock. If you haven't registered yet, you still may have time to do so. I'm not quite sure. You should find a link in your email somewhere. Otherwise, I'll say thank you very much to everybody for joining in. It's been a really useful day, and hopefully we'll be meeting again physically in person fairly soon. So thank you very much.
And I think networking is still open for a little while longer, isn't it, Malcolm?
Yeah, Lucy, if you want to drop us back into networking, people can have a chat if they want to finish up any conversations for a little bit while longer. Thank you.